The restaurant buzzed with energy. Laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the soft hum of background music filled the air. Golden garlands hung from the ceiling, casting a warm light on the long dining table where I sat with my colleagues, celebrating this evening. It was supposed to be special. My evening. For the past 5 years, I had poured my heart into this company, often staying late, tackling problems no one else wanted to handle, and helping junior staff even though it wasn't part of my job. My boss, Richard, had been hinting for months that I was next in line for the senior manager position, and tonight, at this very party, my promotion was to be announced. I had imagined this moment hundreds of times. The applause, the pride, the recognition. I adjusted the hem of my dark blue dress and looked around the table. My team was in high spirits, celebrating the company's quarterly success. At the head of the table, Richard stood up, tapping his fork against his wine glass to get everyone's attention. The room fell silent. My heart pounded with anticipation. "Tonight," he began, in his deep voice, cutting through the noise. "I want to recognize someone truly exceptional who has shown incredible dedication, energy, and talent in a very short time with our company. It's rare to find someone who can make such an impact in just 3 months." My smile faltered. 3 months? Richard turned to my colleague Lisa, the new hire. "Lisa," he continued, "you've exceeded all our expectations. Your leadership, creativity, and problem-solving skills have impressed us all. So I'm thrilled to officially announce your promotion to senior manager. Congratulations." The room erupted in applause. I sat frozen, my fingers clutching the stem of my champagne glass. A lump formed in my throat, but I forced a smile and clapped along with the others as Lisa stood up, blushing and graciously accepting her new role. This couldn't be happening. The world tilted slightly as Richard turned to me, as if remembering I was there. He grinned. "And of course, Katie, you've been such a valuable part of the team. We appreciate everything you do." That was it. Empty words, a pat on the back after 5 years of hard work. I swallowed the lump in my throat and smiled wider. "Of course, Lisa absolutely deserves it," I said, raising my glass in a toast. Richard nodded approvingly. "She's already doing more than you, Katie. You should learn from her." Laughter erupted. Lisa giggled awkwardly and murmured, "Oh, I wouldn't say that." But the words hung in the air like a slap. I laughed along with them. What else was I supposed to do? Cry? Beg? Ask why he had strung me along for months only to humiliate me? Instead, I brought my glass to my lips and took a slow sip. The evening continued. I smiled, chatted, celebrated, but inside, a storm was brewing. When the party finally ended and I stepped out into the cool night air, I pulled out my phone. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed a short, simple email to HR. Subject: Resignation Letter. Dear Richard, attached is my official resignation letter, effective immediately. Best regards, Katie. I hesitated for only a second before hitting send. As soon as the email went through, I took a deep breath. For the first time in years, I felt something unexpected. Relief. But I wasn't done yet. On Monday, Richard was going to learn what happens when you underestimate the wrong person. That Monday morning, the office felt different. I walked through the front doors with a sense of quiet satisfaction. My resignation letter was already in Richard's inbox. He had no idea what was coming. At first glance, everything seemed normal. The receptionist greeted me with a bright smile. Colleagues gathered around the coffee machine, chatting over their morning brew. Lisa was already at her desk, basking in the glow of her new promotion. I didn't blame Lisa. She hadn't done anything wrong. The real problem was sitting in the corner office. The man who had lied to my face for months, making me believe I was valued, only to discard me like I was nothing. I settled into my desk, carefully placing my bag beside it and turning on my computer. I wanted Richard to come to me. And sure enough, his office door swung open. "Katie, my office. Now." The entire floor went silent. Colleagues exchanged nervous glances. No one had ever heard Richard use that tone before. Urgent, rattled, desperate. I stood up slowly, smoothed my blouse, and walked into his office. The door clicked shut behind me. Richard was already sitting at his desk, my printed resignation letter in front of him. He looked up, studying my face as if trying to figure out if this was a joke. "You're leaving?" His voice was laced with disbelief. "Yes." I sat down across from him, folding my hands in my lap. "Effective today." "But why? This is so sudden. We didn't discuss this." I laughed softly. "We didn't discuss Lisa's promotion either, but here we are." His jaw tightened. "Katie, that wasn't personal. She just outperformed you. She's been here 3 months," I said, tilting my head slightly. "But if that's what you think..." Richard leaned forward. "You know I value you, right? You've been an important part of the company for 5 years. I don't want to lose you." I stared at him for a long moment, struck by the audacity of his words. "You don't want to lose me," I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "But you had no problem passing me over for a promotion I'd worked years for. No problem laughing at me when I was humiliated at my own party. No problem telling me to learn from someone who just got here." His usual confidence began to crumble. "Look," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Maybe I mishandled things. Maybe I should have done things differently. But quitting like this, out of nowhere, that's not the right move, Katie. You're acting on emotion." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I sent that email on Friday night, Richard. If it were just emotion, I would have walked out that night. But I didn't. I planned this, and I'm leaving on my terms." His hand clenched into a fist on the desk. He wasn't used to losing. "And what are you going to do?" he asked sharply. "Go to a competitor? Need I remind you, Katie, we have a non-compete agreement." I laughed again. "Oh, I won't need that." He frowned. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. "Do you remember Andrew Carter, the CFO you fired last year?" Richard stiffened. Of course he remembered. Andrew had been one of the company's most valuable assets, but he and Richard clashed too often, and Richard pushed him out, thinking he was replaceable. "Andrew reached out to me a few months ago," I continued. "He's starting his own firm and wanted me to head the operations department, a director-level position." I paused. "I turned him down at first. I was loyal to this company." I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice. "But Friday night changed everything. I called him right after the party, and he offered again. I accepted." Silence. Pure, unadulterated shock. Richard stared at me, trying to process what I just said. "You're going to work for Andrew?" he finally managed, his voice tight. "Starting next Monday," I confirmed. He opened his mouth, closed it, then exhaled sharply. "Katie, be reasonable. This company has been your home for 5 years. We can figure something out. We can talk." "I don't want to talk," I interrupted calmly. "This decision is final." He clenched his jaw. "You won't be able to come back." I smiled. "I won't need to." I turned toward the door, but before leaving I paused. "You know, Richard," I said over my shoulder, "it's funny how people only start to appreciate someone when they're gone." Then I walked out, closing the door behind me, leaving him alone with the consequences of his actions. And it felt incredible. As I stepped out of Richard's office, all eyes were on me. The open workspace fell silent, the usual Monday morning chatter replaced by thick tension. My colleagues didn't even pretend to be working. Heads peeked out from behind cubicles, glances quickly averted whenever I caught them. They knew something had happened, and in a few minutes, they'd find out exactly what. I returned to my desk with surprising calm, opened my email, and sent my resignation letter to the entire leadership team. Subject: Official Notice of Resignation. Dear colleagues, I hereby submit my resignation from my position at the company, effective immediately. It has been an unforgettable experience. Best wishes, Katie. Simple, professional, but the underlying message was clear. It was done. Within seconds, the first whispers spread across the floor, then a second, then a third. The fire had started. I didn't have to wait long before someone approached me. "Katie, is it true?" I turned and saw Rachel, one of the few people I actually trusted in this place. She looked stunned. I nodded, offering a small smile. "Yeah, it's time to move on." She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "Wow, wow. I get it, but I didn't think you'd actually leave." Richard didn't think so either, I muttered. She let out a half laugh, half gasp. "Well, he's an idiot. Everyone here knows you deserved that promotion." A few more colleagues started inching closer to my desk, pretending to be busy but clearly eavesdropping. Even Lisa lifted her head from across the room, her gaze darting between me and Richard's office, as if she couldn't decide whether to feel guilty or relieved. I could sense her hesitation. She wanted to say something, but she didn't. And honestly, I didn't care. 10 minutes later, as I packed up the last of my personal belongings, a new urgent email popped up in my inbox. Subject: Urgent. Let's talk. Meeting in 15 minutes. My office. I stared at the email for a long moment before sighing. Desperate people do desperate things. I took my time walking back to his office. As I stepped inside, the door shut quietly behind me. Richard looked different. The arrogance was gone. The smugness had vanished. Instead, he looked like a man who had just realized he had made a very big mistake. "Katie," he started, leaning forward. "Let's talk." "You're making a rash decision," I chuckled quietly. "Richard, I gave this company 5 years of my life. The only rash decision here is yours." His lips pressed into a thin line. "Look, I admit I handled the promotion situation poorly, but we can fix this. I'm willing to offer you the same as Andrew." I tilted my head. "You don't even know what Andrew is offering me." "What does it matter?" he cut in. "We'll figure something out. I can give you a higher salary, more flexibility, maybe even—" I raised my hand, stopping him. "You don't get it, do you?" Silence. I leaned forward. "It was never about the money. It was about respect." His jaw tightened. "I don't want to stay in a company where my work goes unnoticed until I threaten to leave. I don't want to be offered something only when I already have one foot out the door. If I wasn't valuable to you before, why should I believe I suddenly am now?" Richard's nostrils flared slightly. He wasn't used to losing control of the conversation. "Katie, be reasonable. You're walking away from a stable position for what? Some startup that may not even survive?" I smiled. "That startup is led by someone who values my contributions, and I'd rather bet on myself than stay in a place where I'm treated as disposable." I stood up. "Goodbye, Richard." Packing up the last of my belongings felt surreal. As I carried my box toward the elevator, a few colleagues gave me quiet, subtle claps, small gestures of recognition, my silent victory. They knew. Lisa, still seated at her desk, finally gathered the courage to stand up and approach me. "Katie, I didn't know." I raised an eyebrow. "Didn't know what?" Her mouth opened, then closed again. Of course, she knew. Maybe she hadn't orchestrated it, but she had benefited from my loss. "It's okay, Lisa," I said, not unkindly. "Enjoy the promotion." She flinched, but I had already stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, I exhaled slowly. This wasn't just the end. It was a beginning. The following Monday, after walking out of Richard's office for the last time, I stood in front of a sleek glass building, taking in my fresh start. Carter & Associates, Andrew's company, was smaller than my old one, but it was filled with energy and ambition. Here, people were building something new, not just maintaining a machine created by someone else. I stepped inside, feeling excitement for the first time in years. No more dismissal, no more being undervalued, No more Richard. As the elevator carried me to the top floor, I caught my reflection in the mirrored doors. I looked different, more confident, more alive. This wasn't just a new job, it was freedom. When I entered my new office, a real office with floor-to-ceiling windows and a door I could actually close, I knew I had made the right choice. The morning was filled with introductions, meetings, and onboarding, but everything felt different here. For starters, people listened. During my first leadership meeting, Andrew turned to me with a smile. "Katie, I want you to lead our new initiative. We're restructuring the operations department, and with your experience, you're the best person for the job." Just like that. No bargaining, no need to prove myself over and over again. They already knew my worth. I nodded, suppressing the urge to look around, half expecting this to be some kind of test. "Gladly," I said simply. A few new colleagues smiled approvingly. Andrew nodded, as if he expected nothing less. This is how it should be, I thought. No games, no politics, just respect. The first signs of Richard's downfall appeared 2 days after I left. My phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. "Katie, oh my God, Richard is losing it. Ever since you left, everything's falling apart." I smirked, but kept reading. "He had to call an emergency meeting because no one knows how to handle half the things you did. Turns out Lisa doesn't actually do more than you. She doesn't even know what she's doing." I laughed out loud. Of course. Of course, Richard had overestimated Lisa's abilities and underestimated mine. A second message came in. "Oh, and one more thing. 3 clients have already asked for you by name. When they found out you left, they weren't happy." A wave of satisfaction washed over me. Richard had taken me for granted for years, and now he was learning the lesson he should have learned long ago. Some people are simply irreplaceable. That same day, while I was reviewing strategic documents in my new office, my assistant peeked in. "Katie, you have a call on line 1. It's Dawson and Company. They said they used to work with you and want to discuss moving their account." I blinked. Dawson and Company was one of the biggest client accounts at my previous job. "Put them through," I said, keeping my voice steady, though my heart pounded. A moment later, I heard the familiar voice of Mark Dawson, the CEO. "Katie," he said warmly, "I heard you moved to Carter & Associates. Let's talk." Leaning back in my chair, I smiled slowly. "Of course, Mark. How can I help?" By the end of the week, 3 of my former company's biggest clients had reached out, all expressing the same frustration. "It's just not the same since you left. We don't feel like we're in good hands anymore." If I was leading operations at Carter & Associates, they were ready to make the switch, and one by one they did. I hadn't poached clients. I didn't need to. They left on their own, because they trusted me, not the company I used to work for. And Richard? He was scrambling. Rachel kept me updated. "Lisa's drowning. She's completely unprepared for the role. Heard Richard screaming at the execs behind closed doors this morning. The board is furious about the client losses. Investors aren't happy. They're pressuring Richard to fix this, fast." I could only imagine his face, the panic, the regret. And the best part? I hadn't even tried to hurt him. I was just thriving somewhere else. That Friday evening, as I wrapped up my workday, my phone buzzed with an email from Richard. I raised an eyebrow and opened it. Subject: Proposal. "Katie, I'd like to talk. I think we can reach a mutually beneficial agreement if you're open to it. Let's set up a meeting next week to discuss options. Looking forward to your response. Richard." I leaned back in my chair, laughing softly. He was desperate, and for the first time in 5 years, all the power was mine. I stared at Richard's email for a few moments, savoring the irony. The man who had dismissed me so easily, who had laughed at me, who claimed Lisa did more than I ever did, was now reaching out to me. And I knew why. His world was falling apart. I didn't rush my reply. I composed it calmly, without urgency, without desperation, completely in control. Subject: Proposal. Richard, I'm available for a brief meeting on Monday at 10 a.m. Let me know if that works for you. Best, Katie. I hit send and closed my laptop. I wasn't going to that meeting to negotiate. I was going to watch him squirm. At exactly 10 a.m. on Monday, I walked into the familiar glass office building I had left just weeks ago. Everything felt different. The receptionist hesitated before greeting me uncertainly. Was I a visitor or a ghost from the past? Employees stole glances as I passed. They all knew. And then, when I entered Richard's office, I saw him. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, nervous energy in the way he sat, his fingers restlessly tapping on the table. This was not the arrogant man who had belittled me weeks ago. "Thank you for coming," he said, forcing a strained smile. I sat down, crossing my legs and placing my hands on my lap. "Of course. What's on your mind?" He exhaled and leaned forward. "I won't waste your time. We need you back, Katie." I said nothing, letting his words hang in the air, heavy with irony. He continued, "I underestimated your role here, I admit it. But we can fix that. If you return, I'm willing to offer you a significant salary increase, a senior executive position, and full control over your department." He leaned back, clearly expecting me to be impressed. I wasn't. I tilted my head. "Let's be clear. You had 5 years to recognize my value, 5 years to promote me, 5 years to respect my work." I let the words settle before continuing. "But instead, you chose someone with 3 months of experience and told me to learn from her how to be better. And now, after losing key clients and watching your company spiral downward, you suddenly offer me everything I should have had long ago?" His jaw tightened. "Katie, come on." I raised a hand, stopping him. "Let me ask you something. If I hadn't left, would I be sitting in this chair right now? Would you be offering me this out of appreciation? Or are you only doing it because you're losing control?" His silence said it all. He tried to hide it, but I saw the truth in his eyes. He never valued me until it started costing him. I let out a quiet chuckle, laced with amusement, just as I thought. Richard's desperation broke through. "Katie, be smart. You have history here, a future. Do you really want to throw away all the work you've put into this company?" I smiled. "Richard, you still don't get it, do you?" I stood up, smoothed my blazer, and leaned slightly forward. "I didn't need you. You needed me, and now you finally understand that." His face darkened, but I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes. I turned toward the door, but paused before leaving. "You should learn something, Richard," I said quietly, throwing his own words back at him. "Maybe next time you'll learn to appreciate the people who actually keep your company running." Then I walked out, and this time, I didn't look back. Back at Carter & Associates, things were only getting better. Our client list had nearly doubled as more and more companies abandoned Richard's sinking ship and came to us. And then, on a quiet Friday evening, Rachel sent me one final update that made me laugh out loud. Richard had just been fired. The board had forced him out. They couldn't recover from the loss of clients. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee. Perfect. Richard thought I was replaceable. Turns out, he was the one who was, and I was exactly where I was meant to be.